So I oversee the product organization, take all the amazing technology that our team of researchers and engineers build, and help shape that into useful products. So we're really, we spent a lot of the first 4 years of our existence making a lot of technology, and now it's time to tie the pieces together. So you're going to see that with a lot of things that have been released in the last year and going forward even more. So I've been in Bitcoin since 2011, in and out over the years, freaked out over various hype cycles and booms and busts. So I thought I did good when I sold when it was $14. Apparently that was not a good choice financially, but I've followed the space and been involved indirectly for a long time, and then had the amazing opportunity to work with Blockstream starting in 2017. So Blockstream was a company in the space I respected. I was kind of looking for a career change. I was doing consulting, and I actually reached out to Samson Mo, who is the chief strategy officer, and said, besides Blockstream, who else would be respectable to work for? And he had an opening that fit perfectly for what I do. So I've been there ever since, and it's been an amazing year and a half. It's felt a lot longer than that. All right, so I'm going to start with the famous 6-panel, what people think we do. By the way, just to raise a hand, who's actually heard of Blockstream in here? Because sometimes I get people who have no idea. Okay, almost everyone. All right. Is anyone willing to admit they have a negative opinion of Blockstream? No? I don't have any haters in here. Out of this whole conference of... All right. I guess everyone's avoiding me. All right. So what Bitcoiners think we do, I think that's, pretty positive in general. What RBTC on Reddit thinks we do, that we're a bunch of lizard people controlled by the Bilderberg Group and AXA. I think... Oh, Mike, did you raise your hand when you said a hater? You're not gonna... Okay, good. I needed at least one. All right. And one of our biggest haters, Roger Ver.
More babies are dying in countries around the world because they have less economic freedom. More people are starving to death. They have less economic freedom. People are literally dying because of this. I'm not exaggerating. This is a life and death matter around the world, and more people are dying because we haven't been able to bring more economic freedom to the world.
So yeah, we kill babies, and people are dying because of what we're doing. I don't know how it felt to be Samson in that picture there, trying to defend against that, but I think that would be the last debate with him. All right, what we think we do. If anyone has never been to peterwoolleyfacts.com, I highly recommend it. If you're familiar with Chuck Norris facts, it's like that, but for nerds. What our moms and dads think we do. We do this magical internet money thing. And what we really do is there's a ton of stuff. So I actually flew in here last night from Mountain View. We had our leadership retreat, and we wrote on the board. We started with one whiteboard of all the things we do and we're working on. And we filled it up, and then we started another whiteboard and we filled that one up. And it's just an amazing set of projects that we do. And I think that can confuse people a lot because we're just going in so many different directions, building technology and products all over the place. So I want to kind of distill that down a little bit into what we actually really do. So we have kind of at the top, the things you may have heard us doing. You have Liquid. So it's an interchange settlement network built on a side chain of Bitcoin that's run by a group of exchanges and financial institutions. Lets people send money confidentially using confidential transactions. It has the ability for assets, so you can create any arbitrary asset to send in the network. Really, that will empower a new financial system. We have, next to that, we have a partnership with the Intercontinental Exchange, who's actually headquartered in Atlanta. So they are, if you are unfamiliar with them, they own many stock exchanges around the world, including this little one in New York called the New York Stock Exchange. So if you've heard of them, that's who they are. And they actually do a big part of their business through data services. So all these people trading on the exchange, they need information about orders and markets and what's happened in the past, and they process this and execute trades. And as Bitcoin is becoming more interesting to institutional investors, this is something where they need that quality of data to make their decisions. So we've partnered with them to do that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. We have the Blockstream satellite. So this is a service where we use existing satellites that are out there that beam down to almost all of the populated world the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is something where if you have a satellite dish and some standard off-the-shelf equipment, you can listen in and sync your full node with Bitcoin. So you don't need an interconnect connection. This is really important for Bitcoin. More than I think people realize is, a whole bunch of our infrastructure is built on physical cables, and there are choke points that, let's just say there was an earthquake and the cables that went into Malaysia got destroyed. Everyone inside of that isolated part of the network would now diverge from the main chain, and if they have mining there, you would start seeing different sets of blocks, and no one would have any idea what was going on. But if one person inside of that region has a satellite dish connected to this, they now can listen in and get everyone back in sync on that whole network. So it's pretty powerful, and we've opened this up recently with the next one, Lightning Network, where anyone can pay us with Lightning Network to broadcast any message you want. So I believe there was someone who actually got rickrolled recently over satellite, where they published a picture, ASCII text of Rick Astley singing with the lyrics in it. So if you want to send any network, anything around the world, we will let you do that. We have the Lightning Network. So that's, if you're unfamiliar with the Lightning Network, it's basically a second layer technology on top of Bitcoin to let you do payments. We are one of the 3 companies. I think there might be 4. I think Matt Corallo kind of does things in his spare time with Rust implementation. But there's kind of 3 main implementations of Lightning. So we do seed Lightning, and that's what we focus on and build that technology up. And that's going to be also something that applies to a lot of other technology that I mentioned. So we have Liquid, and then also we'll go into Green Address. So Green Address is a company we acquired back 2015, I think. My slides will correct me if I'm wrong. That is a non-custodial multi-signature wallet. So we run a server. We will co-sign it if it meets your predefined rules, such as, hey, if I spend more than $100 in a day, send me a text and make sure I'm still confirming it. We have no ability to take the funds on this network. We have no ability to do anything wrong. One of the core principles of Blockstream is, Google was "Don't be evil." That apparently wasn't good enough. I don't think that slogan really they use it anymore. I hope not. But ours is "Can't be evil." So we want to design technology that we cannot do anything to stop, even ourselves, if we wanted to. The last 2 more things that kind of in here, simplicity. This is a smart contracting language that can be distilled down to and verified by formal proofs. So if we want to have actual real smart contracting out there with financial implications, there's kind of 2 ways. One is it actually is a smart contract, and the smart contract executes, and it is what it is. And then you have the second model, which is a little bit more popular on Ethereum, which is smart contract's a smart contract unless we decide otherwise. And then we'll just decide that that contract was actually wrong, and we'll just do something else. So I don't think that particular model is that much of an improvement over the existing system. And it was quick to get out, but I think our long-term approach with simplicity, where you can actually prove this is exactly what it will do in every condition, and here's the proof it does it, and it cannot deviate from that. And so this is something that's long-term research project that Dr. Russell O'Connor is working on, and will be instrumental for the Bitcoin ecosystem. And the last one, this is a new release we had, so I don't know if anyone saw, we released Blockstream.info. It's our block explorer. It supports Bitcoin, Bitcoin testnet, and now Liquid. So it's a pretty nice block explorer. The one thing that's different than a lot of other ones is we give you the source code for it. So you may notice other people using the exact same code. We want everyone to be running, don't just depend on a central service for it. You should run your own block explorer if you need a block explorer. All right, I'm going to dive into the company history. I'll probably go through this fairly quickly. Really, why was the company founded? So if you go back, who was in Bitcoin in 2014? Who was following Bitcoin back then? Okay, we got a significant number of things. The ecosystem was much different back then. Bitcoin was still pretty unknown. If you talked about it with random people on the street, they'd look at you like you're crazy and have no idea even what you're talking about. Today, they'll look at you like you're crazy, but they at least know what you're talking about. Core development in general was not really well funded. No one was really doing any of that. There was not really much investment in the space other than a couple of exchanges and wallets and things like that. So it was really founded by a group of a lot of them were Bitcoin developers, and a lot of them were people who were ideologically aligned with those core developers and wanted to form a company around that. And really, it came down to two things: reducing the need for trust when possible. So we really want to, the current financial system right now is massively based on trust. You can break that down to the monetary policy of any company, or I'm sorry, any country. That comes down to, do you trust the central bank of these countries to actually try to meet target inflation rates? Do you trust them to be competent to do that? Do you trust them to not bow to political pressure when it goes otherwise? The financial market beyond that, you have a lot of trust in custodianship, holding your assets for you, banks holding your money, and really, it's not that trust is bad necessarily, but the more you have to trust in the system, the more fragile it is. And the other part is trusting markets to operate fairly. So whenever you have, a stock exchange or any kind of other market, how do you know that your order is being executed in the right order? That maybe someone sees that you're about to do a big buy, so they buy it first, and then you buy, and then you can sell it back on the market to them at a profit. So, a lot of these systems are not transparent, and there's not a way to know that they're actually operating fairly, and they require this third-party trust. And whenever there's trust, there's a security hole. We also want to improve financial privacy. So one of the nice things about cryptography and its overlap over Bitcoin is there's a lot of the pieces already baked in, but there's a lot of room for improving it. So we use a lot, our whole, way of doing things is, how can we be both private, such that only the parties that are involved or that you want to share that with can know this information, but everyone in the whole system can verify that it's correct. So how do you, these things sound so opposite. How do you do both at the same time? And that's what a lot of this tech that we're building really, validates. How do I know this is? This is the whole basis of confidential transactions. Everyone in the system can validate that when I send money to someone else on a transaction, they have no idea how much I'm sending or even what asset I'm sending, but they know that I didn't create any money out of thin air. They know nothing disappeared, and the whole system is true. And this is a pretty amazing thing to have and really helps feed into that top goal. All right, so jumping into the timeline, so 2014, Blockstream was founded. We got our $21 million seed funding. I think there's an interesting story of this. I think they were at like 18 or 19, where trying to call up fundraising, and they said, you know what, we got to do 21 million because of the 21 million bitcoins. So that kind of made the goal of the CFO a little worse for trying to round up extra funding just to hit that magic number. But we did it. So this is, and at that same time, we also had the Sidechains white paper. So if you saw Paul's talk earlier today, he talks a lot about that Sidechains white paper. That was an instrumental part of founding the company. And the key concept of the sidechain is you have Bitcoin at its nature is nearly impossible to change. And if you want to do anything different and new, you can have two options. You can either just go off on your own, create your own altcoin, or you have to try to change Bitcoin. And Sidechain is going to give that third option of, well, we can use Bitcoin, but with a different set of rules on it. So I'll talk a little bit more about Sidechains when I get into Liquid, but this was a key part of forming the company. In 2015, we released the first version of Elements. Elements is a fork of Bitcoin that implements sidechains. So this was I believe, the first actual release of software that implemented this concept and basically was released as open source software that anyone could use. And that's been the basis of most of what we work on for Liquid as well. 2016, we raised another $65 million through various investors and acquired Green Address. So this was a key part of our strategy. Is we need to if we need to have all these side chains and we need to have all these other ways to do things, we need a wallet to handle this, and we also want a wallet that is compatible with financial sovereignty, where you own your own money. A lot of the wallets at that time that were popular were ones that were either custodial, in that they actually had your keys, or that they would hold your wallets and you would just trust their server. They basically had a lot of leverage on you. So we wanted to make sure we had something at our disposal we could use. 2017, we added the confidential assets white paper. So this is a big extension of the confidential transactions concept that had already been in existence. And that's the idea that when I'm sending something, I can obscure even the asset type. So that's a big part of what's going into Liquid. We also we launched the satellite service. So that came in 2017, and we released the first version of Sea Lightning. 2018, we released the cryptocurrency data feed at the beginning of the year, and we had the Liquid network launch. And so Liquid is the implementation of Elements, where it's running this side chain between different exchanges, and launches. You can send Bitcoin confidentially. You can create assets. And then earlier this year, this happened very recently. We announced our partnership with a new venture called Crypto Garage. So it's actually a partnership with a company in Japan called Digital Garage, another company in Japan called Tokyo Tanshi. And probably most people in this room have never heard of Tokyo Tanshi, but if you go to Japan, it's a little bit different. They are one of the largest interbank dealers in Japan. And so that partnership has helped us launch this Japanese yen token for Bitcoin. And actually, just a couple of days ago, I heard there was a speech, and I don't speak Japanese, so I only heard the part that said Crypto Garage, but it was the Prime Minister of Japan actually speaking about this as a pride of Japan having this, being the center of this new financial technology. So basically, it's going to start with a JPY token that we can use to swap without trusting a third party Bitcoin. If you don't know, Japan has had a long history of problems in their exchanges. This dates back all the way to Mt. Gox out of Japan. There's a massive loss there. People still have not been repaid out of the assets. You've had hacks with several other exchanges in Japan in the last 2 years. And so the regulators are really not too happy with the idea of these exchanges holding all of the money of their customers, doing it maybe improperly, and losing the funds. That ends up being a big headache. So we really hope that the technology we're providing can remove that need for that central custodian, where the exchanges can focus on onboarding customers and letting people trade with each other, but never actually have your money. And so that's what Crypto Garage is really starting with. All right, I'm going to dive a little bit in. When I cover the research part, keep in mind I am the product guy, not the director of research. And if you want to learn more about this, Andrew Polstra is our director of research. He has some amazing talks on this if you search on YouTube, and this is basically a summary of a lot of that. So really, we basically kind of focus on the two areas. A lot of the stuff we're building is not ready yet, so we need to do the work of researching it, seeing what's possible, what's useful, and then turning it into products. So we really are focused heavily on improving Bitcoin and improving Bitcoin security. Everything we build for Lightning, for Liquid, is things that could potentially go back into Bitcoin at some point in time as it's been established after it's been reviewed. So you may have how segregated witness is now in Bitcoin. That actually was in Elements first, a couple of years even prior to being in Bitcoin. So all the new things that we're working on, we're going to have Schnorr signatures in Elements and Liquid soon. and that'll probably be there before it gets in Bitcoin. So it's a way of proving the technology out. But we ultimately want to deliver all of this to Bitcoin. We work on some very long-term projects. So simplicity, I think, falls into this bucket. We want something that is going to, we see the problem 5 years out. We're not focused on the next quarter. And we invest heavily in these long-term projects. But we also need to balance that with short-term projects that have direct deliverables that feed into products. And then the last part is the product side that we're working on. I'll cover. These are things where we're very heavily focused on both the Bitcoin ecosystem and kind of the broader financial system where Bitcoin applies as well. All right, so our research really kind of, there's a couple of main areas we're doing research. I don't know how, I think we have about 5 or 6 people really on the research team. And they're constantly innovating and doing stuff. So the areas we're really looking at, multi-party computation. So how can we make multi-signature and multi-party transactions more efficient and preserve privacy? So right now, if you want to do a multi-party signature, if you need to, let's just say you wanted to do an 11 of 15 signature. At that point, there's a lot of passing things around. You need to pass the key. Someone needs to construct it. When you broadcast the transaction, you're broadcasting which of those 11 of 15 keys are actually signing things. So some of the areas we have here is like Schnorr signatures and music and Taproot. This all basically funnels it down to what looks like a single signature. So this is exciting. So it also helps with some censorship resistance properties, because when you spend transactions that look a certain way with certain scripts, they can be identifiable to what they're actually doing. Whereas if you had a single signature, it looks identical to every other transaction on the blockchain. It also helps that it compresses it down to be a single signature. Some of the big multi-party signatures that are out there, when you spend them, that takes up a good chunk of the transaction size, and again, you're not able to put as many transactions in the blocks. This also can go down to something that's called scriptless scripts. I'm not going to go into the big details on this because I'm not Andrew, but basically you're encoding the smart contract into the script itself and providing a proof that it actually executed without actually burdening everyone with executing it. So the thing with Ethereum is you have a computation that's being done by everyone on the network that must be validated. And the idea of our approach for that type of smart contracting is I just need to know that it's something executed correctly, and here's the proof it did, and I really don't care what it was, whether you're doing some complex calculation about the price of Bitcoin and whether or not it was over a certain value and what percentage to pay people. Like, that's not my concern if it's not my transaction. All I needed to know is that someone agreed to something, it executed with this value, and that's correct. And it's pretty, amazing that this kind of technology can even happen, that you have these zero-knowledge proofs that can control all this information. It fits in a lot with what's called bullet proofs. So this is an improvement on zero-knowledge proofs that we have in Liquid with the range proofs that we currently use. But it's basically, you can have an arbitrary statement and compress that into a very small format. We have a lot of research on blockchain extensions. How can we actually improve Bitcoin? So there's a lot of things that we need for other technology that makes Bitcoin better. New opcodes, being able to do SIG hash no input. So that's an important part of Lightning that will be needed for L2. Taproot, which I talked a little bit about, combining everything down to one signature, music. These are all things that are going to extend Bitcoin and make it more powerful. And then simplicity, the smart contract programming language that's defined by formal semantics and can be designed to be efficiently analyzable. So I know exactly, I can give you a proof. This program is going to take exactly this much RAM to use, and it's going to use this much, time to execute. And I can prove to you exactly that before you even execute it. And you can look at the program and you can look at the proof and know it actually happens. As opposed to the Ethereum case where you have a gas limit and you run it, and if you run out, oops, the gas is gone. And you can't necessarily easily analyze what's happening. So this is what happened with the DAO bug, where lots of people looked at it. It looked like it was safe. Turns out there was a case you could send it some series of inputs and steal all the funds. So it's something that's much different approach. We've done work on confidential assets. So this is again the idea that you have more than one asset at the kind of consensus level of the blockchain, and when you transact with it, no one has any idea what you're sending. So I could be sending you a CryptoKitty, I could be sending you a fiat token of JPY, I could be sending you Bitcoin, I could be sending you the deed for the Empire State Building. You have no idea what that actually is unless you're part of that transaction or someone who's part of that transaction shared that information with you. Again, massive multi-party signatures. This is a key part of really scaling the security of any kind of distributed ownership of coins. So right now with Liquid, we have 15 signatures that they're available to be used for controlling that wallet. And that's okay. I mean, 15 is a good number. You need 2/3 of them to spend it. That's pretty hard to do. We can get up to about 40 right now with Bitcoin limits, but imagine if that was 500 and you needed to hack 2/3 of those machines. That makes Ocean's 11 look like child's play at that point, trying to get into that those kinds of systems. This is really going to add a great deal of security to Bitcoin once it's available. I may have scriptless scripts up here twice, so I'll skip that one. But then again, Lightning Network, this is a big part of our research. We have a couple of engineers devoted to both implementation but also future research. We want to improve Lightning. It's an amazing step forward. It's not perfect. There's room for improvement. In particular, the reactive security model that Lightning provides means that if you accidentally do something wrong or you lost your backups and you didn't have the full state, you could accidentally broadcast the transaction claiming the state of the channel. It's not actually correct. Your counterparty is going to think you're trying to cheat them. They're going to broadcast the transaction that can then steal all the funds. It's not really stealing in that case because you kind of messed up, but you don't want to lose all your funds because of that. So we saw that problem and we created L2. And this is a proposal to improve Lightning. It's basically getting rid of the punitive system and just allowing a way of saying, no, this wasn't really the right answer. This is the last one you have on here. So you're not actually just losing all of your funds on there. So that's an important part. It also simplifies watchtowers, the amount of data that they need to keep track of. So watchtowers, if you're unfamiliar, it's basically if I personally can't watch the blockchain to make sure that my channel partner has actually broadcast the right information, I could outsource that to someone else, and they could be paid a fee if they successfully challenge it. The more complex that is, the less likely people are going to be willing to do that service. So this simplifies it and lowers the cost tremendously. Oop, wrong button. All right, I'm going to dive into the product side here. So I mentioned a lot of these things already just at the high level. I want to speak mostly about Liquid at the end, so I'm going to go reasonably fast through these. So we recently launched Blockstream.info and Esplora. Esplora is the open source project. So again, if you ever want to run your own block explorer for Bitcoin or Liquid, download the code and use it, and it will give you your own block explorer. So we support Bitcoin, Bitcoin testnet, and Liquid. It supports Bech32 addresses. So this is something where a lot of block explorers have not implemented yet. So if you're using kind of the latest and greatest technology, we like to stay up with that. It's accessible over Tor. So this is something that a lot of block explorers exist. And the kind of dirty secret of them is they're collecting a lot of information about you. They know what IP address search for what addresses, and they know now you're associated with those types of addresses, those transactions. The amount of data available and being sold out there right now is amazingly high, and just the act of visiting a website may de-anonymize some of your transactions. So we definitely don't want to have that happen. We don't want to promote that. We're very centered on privacy. So if you want to use Tor to connect to us, we absolutely have no idea who you are. And we don't collect any data when you come to the site. And again, if you don't trust us, run your own block explorer. We highly recommend you use it and rip ours off and make your own and relabel it. I am perfectly happy with this. If you ever go to Bitcoin Magazine, they have an explorer. It's actually same code. They rebranded it. And we're very happy when people steal our stuff and use it. So we have green address. This is basically the non-custodial multi-signature wallet. You do the rate limits. It supports iOS, Android desktop. We're going to do a big release coming up, so keep your ears out on that. That should have some big news, and we'll have Liquid added to that. So the cool thing about that is with Liquid, not only can you support having Bitcoin, but you can support Liquid, Bitcoin, and any other asset that's created by the Liquid network. So this is going to be something that's very interesting. Blockstream satellite. Again, there's two parts. There's the satellite service. So we have 5 satellites around the world that we share with other people. That's kind of actually a benefit. You know, a lot of people knock Blockstream. We didn't actually launch the satellites, and yeah, they're pretty expensive to launch, but that also makes them an easy target if you launch something up there, if it's just doing Bitcoin. And so our satellite that we use, they're all shared with regular TV service. So if you know, someone, let's just say some country wanted to take down the satellite and they shot it up there with a giant laser and blew it up, there's gonna be a lot of unhappy people not getting their television broadcast to their satellite. The other nice thing too is it looks identical to someone broadcasting or receiving a television signal. So, you know, if in certain parts of the world where maybe Bitcoin is harder to you know, you don't want to publicly advertise yourself as using Bitcoin. You know, you stick up the satellite dish, no one has any idea, and there's hundreds of other ones that look exactly like it. So it's a nice way to do that. Well, we don't charge for this service at all. It's a free service. It's something that we find beneficial for the ecosystem. You know, anyone else could do this if they wanted to. And we hope others follow our path. But other than just kind of the satellite equipment and that you need to run, we give a parts list and information on how to set yours up. And recently we gave the satellite API so you can broadcast any message you want from the satellite. And so is anyone following the lightning torch? So yeah, the lightning torch has been going around. Samson recently made it, how you get the torch from him was you sent him a lightning invoice over the satellite. And I think that's where someone got where he got rickrolled, where someone refused to send him the invoice and just sent the picture. But that's another way of just broadcasting any information. It was in the first couple of days of it too that I believe someone sent some really interesting blog post from some former Soviet country about how Bitcoin inspired him, and just broadcast this whole message to the world. Didn't know if anyone would read it. Yes, Mike, did you want to? It's broadcast in real time, and then there's a 1-day repeat of where you're at. So if you get behind a day, you have to kind of sync back up another way. But as long as you're connected for a reasonable amount of time in one day, you can stay in sync. The blocks themselves are repeated within that day. Cryptocurrency data feed. Again, institutions are coming. You know, there might be people keep saying that, and maybe they're not, but there's actually, you know, pretty big demand. We were there in New York in April of last year, and there was just a room, you know, at the boardroom of the New York Stock Exchange, and there's just like a massive room full of people who were traditional finance people trying to figure out what is this crazy crypto stuff. And you know, they basically need it in their language to understand what's going on. We get the data from all of the different, what we call venues. They're not necessarily exchanges, but you can think of them as exchanges. We cover 58 different crypto assets, 19 fiat currencies. I know Blockstream got some slack for having altcoin support. I mean, really, we're just providing data to the market. If you think they're undervalued, that's useful data. If you think they're overvalued, it's useful information. And this is something where, you know, you could connect to the APIs of all these exchanges, but every time they change their API, you're having to update it. You're having to go connect to a new exchange when it creates. Why not just use what already exists? All right, so I'm going to dive a little bit into Liquid. I've got, it's what, 10:37, so I got a little bit of time. So yeah, this is really I would say the center of Blockstream, of where we're going. And the idea is, this is a network operated by the exchanges, financial institutions, and trading desks. We are just the technology provider. We have no ability to shut down this network or stop it. Every one of these, if the Federation itself decided they didn't like Blockstream anymore, or we got controlled by someone evil, they could just fire us. And all the source code is open source, and they could basically, continue on without us. So that, as a product manager, that's sometimes a little painful, but I understand why that's needed. And it basically allows fast, private, and reliable transfers to users of the network. And the asset platform is the other part. So, we see, Ethereum ERC20 has basically been the kind of standard for any kind of token that's been issued out in the world. And if you're really using Ethereum just to issue and pass around a token, it's kind of overkill, and you have to write the smart contract to do it. And if you tweak it a little, it's a little bit different. We built it, right into the native layer, and that basically gives you a lot of power of the direct transfers and swaps that are possible. So why would you want to create another asset? So I kind of take the opposite thesis of Paul on, he's in the room, so I'm going to troll him a little bit, but Paul is saying if sidechains exist, there's no need for altcoins, and I'm saying if Liquid exists, there's no need for altcoin, or there's no need to use an altcoin as a different chain. You could just create, create Litecoin as a token on Liquid, and people can speculate on it and do whatever they want. So you could basically just move all of the altcoins into Liquid and trade them, and it basically would maybe prove the thesis that people just want them to speculate versus people are thinking that there's actually a unique feature in them. So I had to troll him a little bit, but since he showed up. All right, so why is this important? Bitcoin blocks are unreliable. That's just how it happens. Mining, you never know when the next block's going to happen. The next block will most likely be on average 10 minutes from now, but it could take an hour, it could take 3 hours, it could take a minute. I have no idea. And as a trader and I'm trying to move my money around, that's just not good. Every minute I'm not trading, I'm losing money. So a lot of them sometimes even borrow money, so they're being charged by time when they're using this money. So the faster that they move it, the more money they can make. And because it's confidential, they avoid problems like front running. They can privately transact. You can hide the asset type and amount. You basically can get money to anywhere faster. If you're doing swaps with people, you don't have to necessarily even trust them or a third party. So there's a lot of big benefits here for trading. The issued assets, this has really been a big demand draw for Liquid. I'd say probably about 75% of the interest in Liquid has been, how do I issue an asset on this platform? I want something that's going to stand the test of time. I want something that's secure. And this is really big. One of the big financial problems we have, very few people actually understand how messed up our financial system is. If I want to trade a stock, what's actually happening, most people think I log into my Fidelity account, I say trade, it happens, it's in my account, great, I'm good. And then on the back end, there's this whole mess of settlements and delays that happen, and they're basically just taking on a lot of that cost and risk for you. And there's just layers and layers of middlemen and custodians in there. So the ability to have an asset that actually has a layer that's not controlled by anyone and is not under any central party is huge. And that's why I think people are starting to see security tokens as something useful. And Bitcoin is great as a monetary base, but securities are always going to exist and they're always going to have value. And being able to do that on a blockchain is actually probably one of the few reasons to actually use a blockchain. There's a lot of really dumb reasons to use blockchains. This actually makes a lot of sense. And you can trustlessly swap with a counterparty without anyone actually holding those assets, and you know you're actually getting paid, and you know that they're actually getting the asset. It's a pretty groundbreaking technology to do that. So one of the things it does is you're pegging money in. If you don't know about sidechains, basically you lock up money in some fund. You can lock up money in, the miners could control it. In an example of something like drive chains. In Liquid, we have the set of functionaries. This is hardware that we've built that basically acts as a big giant multi-signature wallet that basically controls it and looks for certain things to happen to spend it. So you basically convert the money into Liquid Bitcoin. It passes around inside of the system, and when you want to leave the system, you send that back to the functionaries. You say, hey, I want to leave. Here's my way out, and here's my proof I'm one of the people who's allowed to do this. And they will pay you out the Bitcoin. So it is, at the current moment, only directly redeemable by the members of the system. That's really a security reason. It's not like a business decision I made or anything. It's we want to make sure that if in the most catastrophic case where the servers are compromised, the worst that could happen is the money gets moved to someone who's in the system and they can sort it out with each other. But we are seeing exchanges starting to allow you to basically do this. I talked to Andreas last night. He wants to set this up for his service where you could just basically swap with him and he'll handle the outside part. It's also audit friendly. So we talk about privacy. Some people think privacy is really about hiding things. I think it's more about choosing who you share with. So the idea is, I don't want the whole world to know about what's going on, but there may be certain people that I do want to share, and I want to prove to them that it actually is what I said. So that's the big part where if I want to share with an auditor, we recently released a proof of reserves tool that proves that you have the signatures for certain types of Bitcoin's UTXOs. And one of the criticisms was, I don't want to share that with the whole world. Everyone will see my UTXOs. The answer is, yeah, you just share that with the regulator in that case, and that's kind of who that tool may apply to, and then some more advanced features will come later. So yeah, it's very, very audit friendly. So this is always a concern from the members. They want to make sure that they can prove to the regulators they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And again, you can show everything you want. Everything else is just blind to the network when you're running it. They don't know what's going on, and that's kind of the common carrier model of I don't know what phone traffic's going over my phone line, so people could be doing bad things or good things, but I have no idea and I can't stop it. And that's kind of how we built the system, is to fall in line with existing technologies that already do this type of thing. The last thing is why this matters for Bitcoin. So really, the key part here is we think Bitcoin is special. Of all there's thousands of cryptocurrencies now. I think Bitcoin's the only one that has stood up to two unique challenges. One is attempts to co-opt it and control it. So this is something that was in the No2X movement. If a large group of businesses decided they want to change it in a certain way and the users want to stop that, they can, and they have, even when it was very powerful forces, 80% of the hash power, all saying they're going to do this and try to kill it. It didn't happen. It failed. And that was because the users were strong enough to stop it. It's distributed enough. There's no central authority on Bitcoin. But also, the other side of the spectrum, you have changes that are bad, and you have changes that might be held up by force. And so Bitcoin also stood up to this challenge. It was 2 years ago with the UASF. So this is where SegWit was being blocked, and the user said, no, it's not being blocked anymore. You come with us, or we're just not going to follow you. And eventually everyone moved forward together. And so this matters. We think Bitcoin is special. It is the soundest money that has ever been created, and having no trusted party in control, no one able to change it, no political power that can do it, that is unique, and the financial system needs to be based on something like that. So again, we don't have any trust at that base layer. We don't have assets that require trusted third parties to move around. We have Lightning on top of that that's going to allow rapid and private movement of all these assets. And we have scaling and privacy technology that is going to open the world without changing these properties. We want to make sure that we don't get rid of any of these base properties to do that. So we really believe Bitcoin is the answer for that. Bitcoin, or Blockstream in general, was built on this commitment to Bitcoin. Pretty much everyone at Blockstream is tied, I would say, even more strongly to Bitcoin than Blockstream. Our success is tied to Bitcoin's long-term success. We're not betting on anything else. We're not creating altcoin wallets. We're not. If Bitcoin fails, the company will fail. So we're very tightly aligned with that. We also are able to. We want to prove this technology to make Bitcoin better. We want to prove it out in a real world use case so that it can be proved as secure. We each have a financial stake in Bitcoin. Every employee of Blockstream has a Bitcoin bond that is distributed over time. So I need Bitcoin to do well over many years, not just in the short term, for my own financial success. And we're just all committed to that mission. So this is something that is deeply rooted in the company. I believe that's it. So I think.
All right, round of applause, everybody.